Is Facebook too big to be controlled? What is Facebook? Facebook, Inc. is a US-based social media platform and a technology company, situated in Menlo Park, California. It was birthed in Harvard University, where Mark Zuckerberg and his roommates manifested their brainchild into reality, in the year 2004. Since then, it grew at an exponential pace to acquire other bigwigs in the industry such as Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus, making it a tech giant. As of 2021, Mark Zuckerberg has a net worth of $120.6 billion, making him the fifth richest person in the world. It's interesting to note that the privacy data issues attributed to Facebook did not drastically affect its popularity. This concern was raised in 2018, when without the consent of Facebook's users, their personal data was harvested by Cambridge Analytica for political campaigning, particularly to help Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. Interestingly, despite this news, there has been an increase in the user growth of the site, which hiked by 1.8% during the final quarter of 2018. Although Facebook share prices decreased by 24% right after the controversy, these losses were recovered within 2 months. However, does Facebook, the social media platform, continue to remain a giant in its field? The answer is a big no. As a parent company owning other big platforms, Facebook is performing quite well. But as a social media platform, it is safe to say that it has lost its charm and a lot of users. To begin with the rise of Instagram and Snapchat, Facebook is no longer considered hip by the younger generation. But that is the least of its problems. Facebook garners its revenue from advertisers who, according to studies, are slowly pulling out. There are several reasons for the same. While the decreasing active user base is one reason, the privacy scandal played a big role. Moreover, there are other online marketing trends picking up, rendering Facebook ads old-fashioned. The cost of Facebook ads has decreased by 35% to 50%, which spells bad news for the company. What's interesting to note is that MySpace was already a rage when Facebook was launched. So what did Facebook do differently to win this battle with an established platform? A million things. It had robust, undefeatable technology, solid PR strategy, a concept that relied on strengthening relationships globally over offering a platform for recreation and hanging out, allowing the market to determine the developments that must be worked on, and finally, the patience to not make hasty decisions in an attempt to grow quickly. Right now, Facebook is owned by Mark Zuckerberg and its parent company Facebook, Inc. Facebook earns $568.56 per second and its share price right now is $328.73. Making it the fourth highest earning website in the world. So what are the pros and cons of the website? Let's start with the pros. Facebook continues to be a platform that connects people globally and is still a hub for those who want to market their products and services. It is still heavily relied upon by the older generations regardless of the disengagement of the younger users. Its financial statistics indicate that it is here to stay for a little longer, at the very least. The cons, as we all know, include data concerns, serious competition from newer apps, user disengagement, and a series of scandals. Last year, it was disclosed that Mark Zuckerberg recommended many potential hires to Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign manager. This sparked outrage as several politicians attacked him for several issues like misinformation, privacy, election meddling, and bias. This is the first time that a tech CEO was seen being directly involved in politics. This brings us to the topic of the day. With elections around the corner, people are both cautious and curious about Facebook's involvement in the process, either through campaigning, ads, or the spreading of fake news, with the latter bringing the biggest concern. Mark Zuckerberg was seen back at Capitol Hill again a few months ago, to defend his company against this issue. He was questioned in relation to the ads being published by politicians with content that is not entirely true or accurate, thereby propagating false information in the form of campaigning. So the question is Facebook too big to be controlled? Here are 10 reasons why. Firstly, there has been a proposal to fact-check every ad with political undertones. But it is impossible not to wonder about its feasibility. While some content can be verified quite easily, there are others that fall in the gray area, especially when they take the forms of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So how does one verify and determine the accuracy of such ads? Second, it is the mere volume of data that must be monitored which makes this idea impossible to translate into reality. Facebook is a global platform, meaning it operates in several countries. Now, each of these countries holds several local and national elections throughout the year in different languages, making it impossible for the team of Facebook to actively regulate election-related ads. Thirdly, as revealed by Washington Post's Glenn Kessler's fact-checking in the newspaper, it is easy to swivel and manipulate facts in a way that fits an individual's narrative. In such a case, determining if something should be classified as truth or false information becomes extremely tricky. Newspapers often take statements of a political figure and interpret them in a manner that is not rooted in its true meaning. In such a case, how can Facebook determine the authenticity of the information? Which brings us to the fourth point, which is, even if such a proposal is passed, what will stop Facebook fact-checkers from letting their bias lead their judgment? It is a well-known fact that one of Facebook's biggest investors, after all, is Trump advisor Peter Thiel. In such a case, the regulation of content by Facebook may cause more harm than good. Fifth, social media has become a hub of discourse where people engage in conversation through posts, comments, and other means. In other ways, it has become a medium that enables users to exercise their free speech, in all its glory. In such a case, the content which is put up on Facebook is protected by the First Amendment, regardless of its nature or its accuracy. Therefore, this becomes a problem rooted in the Constitution and no regulatory mechanism can mitigate it. Sixth, Facebook is now planning to create a board which will make decisions pertaining to this matter. However, this step will not address the crux of the problem, as the decisions taken by the board may not be supreme. Even if they are ruled to be the supreme authority in this matter, their decisions can lead to several consequences that may not be profitable for Facebook. For example, they may choose to allow a post that is against the Indian government stay online. The Indian government may become agitated and ban Facebook. In other words, even if the execution is in some way made easier, the decision-making process will still continue to haunt those who are involved. That is because what is right and what is wrong may vary drastically based on the context. For example, offensive content that is posted seriously is a problem. However, if similar content is posted in a satirical manner, with an aim to communicate or convey a message, it is deemed to be harmless and even an integral form of activism. So again, the problem of regulation on Facebook is complex in nature. Seventh, as of now, Facebook has 1.73 billion daily active users. So, even if 99% of the users' activity is regulated, there will be millions who get away with content that is not checked or monitored. So, how can Facebook be held liable in such a case? Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act protects Facebook from any liability from user-based content. Eighth, social media platforms are just that, platforms. They offer users a stage wherein they can post anything they want. Then, moderating everything that is posted would be borderline censorship. This will drive away many of its users and will only cater to a specific group of people whose speech aligns with Facebook's idea of correct and accurate. Facebook offers several channels of communication: posts, comments, and private messages. Therefore, determining what is appropriate for which medium may be much more complex than it seems. Ninth, as mentioned already, Facebook is operating in several countries. This makes content regulation all the more complex and irregular. That is because what is acceptable in one country may be blasphemous in another. Moreover, Facebook enables cross-border communication, which makes it even more difficult to impose different laws from different countries in the form of content regulation or moderation. Thus, it is safer for the company to not regulate at all, instead of regulating selectively and then getting into trouble. Lastly, Facebook and its acquired companies have become a part and parcel of life in the form of recreation, entertainment, communication, networking, and job seeking. Users' virtual IDs are comparable to real IDs in the way that most people have one. They have attached themselves to users' private and public lives. Using social media platforms has become a habit stronger than smoking, as we all know several people who have gone on social media detoxes but have returned quite unsuccessfully. The platforms have become mediums for activism, citizen journalism, and other such actions of fighting for causes. Thus, any attempt to police people, posts, content, and comments on these platforms may be met with tremendous outrage. So, in other words, it is impossible to regulate content on Facebook, and yes, it is too big and too widely used to be stopped. Recently, Zuckerberg has become quite vocal in support of content regulation, as he claimed in several interviews that he does believe that unregulated content is a serious problem. He called for stricter government regulations, and Facebook published a new white paper, which is an authoritative report that informs readers about a complex issue and presents the issuing body's stance on the issue that emphasizes several questions that must be considered when implementing universal content regulation for web-based services. Initially, Zuckerberg was completely against this concept, but the recent bout of scandals may have influenced his opinions. Interestingly, recent reports published by Facebook, while implying that they are aimed to ensure better regulation, in fact only state the various measures that are already being taken up by the company as the appropriate solutions. Furthermore, the white paper detached Facebook from any form of liability, and instead placed the responsibility on law enforcement officials and users to take several measures. In terms of the company's responsibility, Facebook suggested passive steps such as publishing their content standards or creating a channel for users to appeal a party's content removal or non-removal decision. It also recommended incentivizing the parties to attain certain targets, like keeping the prevalence of violating or offensive content below a pre-decided threshold. Several newspapers have criticized the white paper, stating that it offers no substantial solutions, and instead is just a diplomatic move. So now, let me ask you what you think. Do you personally believe that Facebook is too big to be controlled? More importantly, do you think content must be regulated on social media platforms, or should free speech prevail? Hit me up with your opinions in the comments below. Let's have an interesting discourse. See you next time for another beautiful video. Thank you for watching. Hope you will be safe.